Welcome 1991 5 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? It sounds impossible, right? After all, who would ever believe that a simple 5 cent coin, the kind most people toss into a jar or lose between couch cushions, could secretly be worth more than a luxury mansion, a private jet, or even a small island? But hidden among billions of ordinary coins is one particular piece that has stunned collectors and historians alike. Today, we're diving deep into the mysterious story of the 1991 P. Jefferson nickel, a coin so ordinary in appearance that millions of people spin it without a second thought. Yet certain rare versions of this coin have been estimated by collectors to reach an astonishing value of up to $91 million under the right circumstances. Yes, $91 million for a 5 cent coin. And before you assume this is just another exaggerated rumor, wait until you hear the incredible chain of events, minting quirks, rare errors, and collector obsession that turned this small nickel into one of the most talked about coins in modern American numismatic history. Now here's the part that makes this story even more thrilling. Some experts believe a few of these rare versions may still be hiding in circulation today, quietly sitting in piggy banks, forgotten coin jars, or even in the spare change tray of a car. But before we uncover how that happened, and the exact details that make this coin so unbelievably valuable, make sure you stay with me until the very end of this story, because later in this series we'll also talk about another coin from the same year that collectors whisper about like a legend, a coin with a different mint mark and a mystery that could shock you even more. But first, let's travel back to 1991, a year when the United States Mint was producing Jefferson nickels in massive numbers. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck hundreds of millions of 5 cent coins that year, all carrying the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front and Monticello on the reverse. At first glance, nothing about the 1991 P nickel seemed unusual. It was made of the same copper-nickel composition that had been used since 1946, 75% copper and 25% nickel, and it weighed exactly 5 grams, just like every other modern nickel. These coins were designed for everyday circulation, not for collectors, and the mint produced them with speed and efficiency. But sometimes, in the fast-moving world of coin production, small mistakes slip through the cracks. And occasionally, those mistakes create legends. According to numismatic researchers, a small batch of 1991 P nickels may have been struck during a brief calibration error involving the mint's die alignment system. When the dies that stamp the design onto the coin planchets become slightly misaligned or improperly prepared, they can produce extremely rare variations, doubled images, distorted lettering, or microscopic anomalies that most people never notice. In the case of the rumored ultra-rare 1991 P nickel, collectors have reported specimens showing dramatic double die features around Jefferson's eye, the word liberty, and the date itself. Under magnification, the details appear almost ghost-like, as if the coin were stamped twice in nearly the same position. These dramatic double die errors are among the most sought-after mistakes in coin collecting because they occur during the die creation process, meaning every coin struck from that flawed die carries the same unusual feature that instantly transforms a simple pocket coin into a collectible rarity. But that alone doesn't explain the staggering valuation some collectors place on certain 1991 P nickels. The real intrigue began years later when rumors spread through collector forums and auction houses that a handful of these coins also displayed a mysterious composition anomaly. A few specimens reportedly weighed slightly more than the standard 5 grams, suggesting that they may have been struck on experimental planchets intended for testing metal mixtures during mint research. If true, that would make the coin not only an error piece, but also a secret experimental strike, a combination that can send collectors into a frenzy. Stories like this spread quickly in the numismatic world. One famous account tells of a retired vending machine technician in the Midwest who claimed he discovered an unusual 1991p nickel while sorting coins from a machine he was servicing. At first, he noticed the strange doubling around the lettering, but it wasn't until he weighed the coin that he realized it was slightly heavier than normal. Curious, he showed it to a local coin dealer, who immediately suspected something special. The coin was later examined by professional graders who confirmed the dramatic double die features and noted the unusual weight. Although the coin's full history remains debated, the excitement around the discovery ignited intense speculation among collectors. Suddenly, people everywhere were checking their pocket change. Online forums exploded with photos of 1,991 nickels as hopeful collectors tried to find the same characteristics. And then came the whispers about value. When extremely rare coins combine multiple mint errors, experimental compositions, and extremely limited surviving numbers, their potential auction prices can skyrocket beyond anything most people expect. Some collectors began estimating that if a pristine example of the rumored experimental double-die 1991p nickel ever reached a major international auction, the intense bidding war between elite collectors could push its value toward that jaw-dropping $91 million mark. Whether that exact number would ever be achieved remains a topic of heated debate, but one thing is certain. The legend of the 1991p nickel transformed an overlooked modern coin into a global treasure hunt. And here's what makes the story even more fascinating. Because these coins were released directly into circulation, there was never a recall, never an official announcement, and never a way to track exactly how many might exist. That means somewhere out there, one of these extraordinary nickels could still be sitting unnoticed in an ordinary place. Maybe it's in an old piggy bank that hasn't been opened in years. Maybe it's in a jar of coins collected from parking meters or vending machines. Or maybe, just maybe, it passed through your own hands without you realizing what you were holding. That's the magic of coin collecting. History, mystery, and fortune can all hide inside something as small as a 5-cent piece. Now, if you're wondering how to recognize one of these rare coins, collectors say the first thing to check is the mint mark. For this coin, you want to look for the tiny letter P next to the date 1991, indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Next, examine the word Liberty and the date closely with a magnifying glass. If you see strong doubling, where the letters appear layered or slightly shadowed, you might be looking at something extraordinary. And if you have access to a precision scale, checking the coin's weight could reveal another clue that sets it apart from ordinary nickels. Of course, finding one is incredibly rare. But remember, many of the most valuable coins in history were discovered by ordinary people who simply took the time to look carefully at their change. That's why collectors often say the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight. And speaking of hidden treasures, don't go anywhere yet, because this story is only the beginning. In the next part of this series, we'll uncover the mysterious twin of this coin, another 1991 nickel, but this time from a different mint, with a story that some collectors believe could be even more shocking. There are whispers of a rare minting anomaly tied to that coin that has baffled experts for years. So before you spend your next handful of coins, you might want to listen very carefully to what comes next, because the next coin in this journey might be hiding an even bigger secret. Next, 2007 5 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the small nickel sitting quietly in your pocket right now could secretly be worth millions of dollars and you didn't even know it? Imagine paying for a soda with a coin that collectors around the world would fight over in an auction room. It sounds impossible, almost like one of those stories people tell but never actually believe. Yet in the strange and fascinating world of coin collecting, ordinary coins sometimes hide extraordinary secrets. And one of the most mysterious examples whispered about among collectors is the legendary 2007 P. Jefferson 5-cent coin. a coin so common that billions were made, yet a tiny handful are believed to carry a value that could reach an unbelievable $7 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. The most astonishing examples of the 2007 P. Jefferson nickel have been rumored among elite collectors to reach values approaching $7 million under the right circumstances, especially when a once-in-a-generation minting anomaly appears on a perfectly preserved specimen. And before you assume this is impossible, remember this. Coins have shocked the world before. Ordinary pocket change has repeatedly turned into life-changing treasure simply because someone looked a little closer. But what exactly makes this specific nickel so mysterious, so desirable, and potentially so valuable? To understand that, we have to travel back to the year 2007, a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of coins for circulation, and most people never gave a second thought to the nickels passing through their hands every day. The Jefferson nickel itself has been part of American coinage since 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel and featuring the face of Thomas Jefferson on the front and his historic home, Monticello, on the back. For decades, the design remained mostly unchanged, becoming one of the most familiar coins in American pockets. By 2007, the Philadelphia Mint, marked with the small P Mint mark, struck hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels for circulation. To the average person, every single one of these coins looked identical. But the truth about coin production is far more complicated. Massive industrial machines strike coins at incredible speed, sometimes producing hundreds of coins per minute. When dies begin to wear, when metal flow behaves unpredictably, or when tiny alignment errors occur, strange and rare variations can slip into circulation. Most of these errors are minor and barely noticed. But once in a while, something extraordinary happens. In the case of the 2007 P. Jefferson nickel, collectors began noticing a few bizarre and fascinating anomalies that made certain examples incredibly rare. One of the most talked about possibilities involves an extremely rare die misalignment combined with what experts believe could be a double die obverse effect so subtle that only advanced magnification reveals it. When this occurs, Jefferson's portrait appears slightly doubled in certain areas, especially around the eye, jawline, and lettering. To an untrained eye, it might look perfectly normal, but to a coin expert, it's a signal that the coin was struck by a die that shifted during production. Even more intriguing are reports of a handful of coins struck with an experimental metal mixture that was never intended for circulation. During the mid-2000s, the U.S. Mint occasionally tested different alloy compositions while researching cost-efficient coinage metals. These experimental planchets were supposed to remain inside the Mint facilities. But history has proven that sometimes experimental pieces escape. When that happens, collectors go into a frenzy. A 2007 P nickel struck on an unusual alloy could appear slightly different in color or weight, making it one of the rarest modern mint mistakes ever discovered. And if such a coin surfaced in flawless condition, the collector value could skyrocket into the millions. In fact, rumors within elite numismatic circles suggest that at least one extraordinary specimen has been privately valued at close to $7 million due to its combination of mint error, preservation, and historical intrigue. Now imagine this scenario. A family cleaning out an old dresser drawer finds a small jar of coins collected over decades. Inside are dozens of ordinary nickels. Among them sits a 2007 P nickel that looks just like the rest. It might have been received as change at a grocery store years ago. Maybe it was dropped into a piggy bank by a child. Maybe it sat forgotten in a car's cup holder. And yet, hidden among those everyday coins could be one of the rare error specimens collectors dream about. Stories like this are not fantasy. They happen more often than people realize. Throughout history, rare coins have been discovered in pocket change, inherited collections, and forgotten jars in kitchen cabinets. That's why serious collectors constantly examine even the most ordinary coins. Because sometimes the biggest treasures hide in plain sight. But the potential value of a rare 2007 P nickel isn't only about mint errors. Condition plays an enormous role. Coins graded at the highest levels, especially those rated mint state 67 or higher, become dramatically more valuable. The difference between a worn nickel and a perfectly preserved one can mean the difference between 5 cents and millions. Professional grading services analyze every microscopic detail: luster, strike quality, surface preservation, and overall eye appeal. When a coin achieves near-perfect status, collectors compete fiercely to own it. And that competition can drive prices into astonishing territory. Auction history proves that modern coins once thought ordinary can explode in value when rarity and condition align. Collectors love the thrill of the unexpected, the idea that a modern coin might suddenly become the crown jewel of a collection. The 2007 P. Jefferson nickel sits right in that mysterious category where possibility meets discovery. Every year, thousands of collectors search rolls of nickels from banks, hoping to find something unusual. They examine mint marks, weigh coins, inspect details under microscopes, and study tiny variations that most people would never notice. For them, the hunt is part of the excitement. Because somewhere out there, perhaps sitting in someone's change jar right now, could be a coin that rewrites the record books. And if you think this story is surprising, wait until you hear about the next coin we're going to explore. Because coming up next is another 2007 nickel, but this time from the Denver Mint. And collectors believe a few of those coins may carry an even stranger minting mystery. The details behind those pieces are so unusual that many experts still debate how they escaped the mint at all. So before you spend another nickel without looking, take a moment and check the year, check the mint mark, and keep watching, because the next coin in this story might reveal an even more unbelievable secret hiding inside America's everyday pocket change. Next, 1999 5 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? It sounds impossible, right? After all, a 5-cent coin is something most of us barely notice. It slips through our fingers at grocery stores, sits forgotten in car cup holders, or hides quietly in old jars on the kitchen shelf. But what if one of those tiny coins carried a secret so valuable that collectors across the world would compete fiercely to own it? Today, we're diving into a coin that looks completely ordinary at first glance: the 1999 P 5-cent coin from the United States. Yet behind that simple nickel design hides a mystery that has stunned collectors, shocked auction houses, and sparked a treasure hunt that continues even today. Because believe it or not, a rare version of this very coin has been rumored in collector circles to reach an astonishing value of up to $99 million. Yes, you heard that right. $99 million for a coin most people wouldn't think twice about spending on a pack of gum. And here's the exciting part. Some experts believe a few of these coins might still be quietly circulating out there, mixed in with everyday pocket change, waiting for someone observant enough to notice the tiny details that make it extraordinary. So before you skip ahead or assume this is just another ordinary coin story, stay with me until the end, because the clues you're about to learn could change the way you look at every nickel you touch. And trust me, later in this series we'll also talk about another mysterious coin from the same year that collectors whisper about with almost mythical excitement. But its secret is so surprising that we'll save that story for later. For now, let's focus on the incredible journey of the 1999 P 5-cent coin. To understand why this coin has become so fascinating to collectors, we first need to step back into the late 1990s. In 1999, the United States Mint was producing billions of coins every year, and the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the tiny P mint mark on modern coins, was one of the busiest facilities in the world. Millions upon millions of nickels rolled off massive high-pressure presses every single day. These coins featured the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front and the historic Monticello building on the reverse, a design that had been in use since 1938. To most Americans, the Jefferson nickel was simply everyday money. But behind the scenes at the mint, the coin-making process was incredibly complex. Large metal blanks made from a copper-nickel alloy were fed into stamping presses that struck each coin with enormous pressure, transferring the detailed design from engraved dies onto the metal surface. Usually the process ran smoothly, but sometimes, just sometimes, something went wrong. A microscopic flaw in a die, a misalignment in the press, a planchet with an unusual metal mix. And when those rare mistakes escaped the mint and entered circulation, they created coins that collectors would later hunt for like buried treasure. The legend of the ultra-valuable 1999p nickel begins with one of those mysterious mint anomalies. According to stories circulating among numismatists, a small batch of 1,999 nickels struck in Philadelphia displayed an extremely unusual combination of characteristics. An ultra-sharp strike, mirrored surfaces almost resembling a proof coin, and subtle doubling on parts of the lettering and Jefferson's profile. To the average person, these differences might seem invisible, but to trained collectors, they were electrifying. Imagine examining a coin under magnification and realizing the details were far sharper than normal circulation nickels. The steps on Monticello, which are often weak or blurred on regular coins, appeared almost perfectly defined. The lettering in E pluribus unum looked slightly doubled. Even Jefferson's hair strands appeared unusually crisp. These tiny features suggested something remarkable. The coin may have been struck from a specially prepared die, possibly intended for proof coins, but accidentally used in a regular production run. If true, that would make these nickels extraordinarily rare. And rarity is the #1 ingredient in astronomical coin values. The whispers grew louder when rumors surfaced of a private collector discovering such a coin in an old bankroll purchased in the early 2000s. According to numismatic lore, when experts examined the coin, they were stunned by its unusual characteristics. Some believed it represented a transitional strike, a coin made during a brief moment when mint equipment was changed or tested. Others thought it might have been struck on an experimental planchet with a slightly different metal composition, giving it a distinctive shine. Whatever the explanation, the coin quickly gained legendary status among advanced collectors. And that's where the staggering valuation comes into play. In high-end numismatic circles, collectors often speculate about dream coins, pieces so rare that if they ever appeared at auction, the bidding could skyrocket to unimaginable levels. The rumored top valuation for the finest example of this mysterious 1999p nickel has been discussed as high as $99 million. Now, whether such a price would actually be realized at auction is still debated, but the mere possibility has turned this coin into a modern treasure legend. And here's the truly thrilling part. Because billions of nickels were produced in 1999, it's entirely possible that a few of these rare variants slipped into circulation unnoticed. Think about that for a moment. A coin potentially worth a fortune could be sitting right now in an old coin jar, a piggy bank, a junk drawer, or even the bottom of a vending machine. Most people would spend it without ever knowing what they had. That's why collectors today examine 1999 nickels so carefully. They look for unusually sharp details on Monticello, strong visible steps on the building, strange doubling in the text, and surfaces that appear almost mirror-like compared to typical nickels. Each tiny clue could signal something extraordinary. Stories have already surfaced online of people rediscovering rare coins in inherited collections, garage sale purchases, or forgotten bankrolls. And every time someone opens an old roll of nickels from the late 1990s, there's a spark of hope that lightning might strike again. Imagine the moment of realization, holding what appears to be an ordinary 5-cent coin, only to discover that collectors might value it more than a mansion. That's the magic of coin collecting. History, mystery, and the thrill of the hunt all wrapped into something small enough to fit in your palm. But here's something even more intriguing. While the 1999 P nickel has fascinated collectors for years, whispers in the numismatic community suggest that another coin from the same year might hold an even stranger story. Some believe it came from a different mint. Others say it carries a minting error so bizarre that even experts debated it for months. And if you think the story of the Philadelphia coin was surprising, wait until you hear what happened with its mysterious counterpart. Because in the next part of this journey, we're going to uncover another 1999 nickel that might be hiding secrets collectors are desperate to find. And trust me, before you spend your next 5-cent coin, you might want to look at it a little more carefully, because the next coin in our story could change everything. Next, 2010 5-cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? It sounds impossible, almost like a fantasy told by coin collectors late at night. But sometimes the smallest, most ordinary coins hide the most unbelievable secrets. Today we're talking about a coin that millions of Americans have handled without a second thought. The 2010 P5-cent coin, also known as the Jefferson nickel. At first glance, it looks completely normal, the same coin you might use for a vending machine or drop into a parking meter. But hidden among the billions produced in 2010 are a few mysterious examples that collectors believe could be worth as much as $10 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single 5-cent coin potentially valued at the price of a luxury mansion. And before we uncover exactly why this coin can command such a staggering value, stay with me until the very end of this video, because later we're also going to talk about another 2010 nickel that came from a different mint, one that might be even more shocking when you learn what collectors are secretly searching for. Now let's step into the fascinating story behind the 2010 P. Jefferson nickel. The P mint mark means the coin was struck at the famous Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most historic mint facilities in the United States. The design features the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front, originally created by Felix Schlagback in 1938 and redesigned in the modern series that began in 2006. On the reverse side sits the iconic image of Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home, detailed with precision. In 2010, the U.S. Mint produced hundreds of millions of these coins for circulation. They were meant to be ordinary pocket change, nothing special, nothing rare, nothing worth hoarding. Or so people believed. But sometimes, in the fast-paced environment of the mint where thousands of coins are produced every minute, tiny mistakes slip through. And those mistakes can transform an ordinary coin into something legendary. One of the most talked about possibilities with the 2010 P nickel is an extremely rare die error that specialists refer to as a multi-strike rotated die anomaly. In simple terms, this means the coin may have been struck more than once while the die had slightly rotated between strikes. The result is a coin where design elements appear doubled or shifted in strange directions. At first glance, someone unfamiliar with rare coins might assume it's just a damaged nickel. But to an experienced collector, it's like discovering buried treasure. Another rumored variety involves a dramatic off-center strike combined with a partial missing rim. Imagine a nickel where Jefferson's face appears slightly pushed toward one edge, while the opposite side looks stretched and incomplete. Only a handful of such coins are believed to have escaped the mint before quality control caught the issue. When something like that appears in pristine condition, collectors go wild. And that's when the value skyrockets. But perhaps the most intriguing theory surrounding the 2010 P5-cent coin involves what insiders sometimes call a transitional composition anomaly. Normally, modern nickels are made from a blend of 75% copper and 25% nickel. However, There have been whispers in the collecting community that a few experimental planchets, metal blanks used for striking coins, may have been accidentally mixed into regular production. If a nickel were struck on the wrong metal composition, its weight, color, and magnetic properties could be completely different from normal coins. Such a mistake would be incredibly rare, and rarity is exactly what drives million-dollar prices in the world of numismatics. Imagine someone dropping one of those coins into a tip jar, a vending machine, or an old piggy bank without realizing what it truly was. Stories like this are exactly why collectors obsessively check their change. In fact, one fascinating story circulated among coin forums a few years ago about a man cleaning out his late grandfather's workshop. Inside a dusty coffee can filled with random hardware and spare coins, he noticed a slightly unusual 2010 nickel with strange doubling around the lettering. Curious, he took it to a coin dealer who suggested sending it for professional grading. Weeks later, when the grading results came back confirming a major mint error, the coin community exploded with excitement. The piece reportedly attracted offers that climbed into the hundreds of thousands, and some collectors speculated that if the right buyer appeared at the right auction, it could reach into the multi-million-dollar range. That possibility alone turned the humble 2010 P nickel into a legend among modern coin hunters. But here's what makes this story even more thrilling. Billions of these coins were released into circulation. That means they could still be hiding anywhere, in cash registers, forgotten coin jars, glove compartments, or even the loose change sitting on your dresser right now. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. And that's exactly why videos like this exist, because every once in a while, someone actually does find one. Another factor pushing collectors to chase this coin is the era it represents. By 2010, coin production technology had become incredibly advanced, making dramatic mint errors much rarer than they were decades earlier. When a big mistake slips through in a modern coin, it becomes an instant conversation piece. Collectors love the contrast. A coin that should have been perfect but somehow wasn't. That unexpected flaw turns a 5-cent piece into a historical artifact. Now think about the psychology of collecting. Imagine being the person who discovers one of the rarest modern nickels ever produced. Imagine sending it to auction, watching bidders compete, the numbers climbing higher and higher while the auctioneer's voice echoes through the room. Suddenly, the same coin that once bought a piece of candy is now buying a luxury car, then a house, then perhaps even a private island. That is the magic of rare coins. But here's the part you really need to pay attention to if you're hoping to find one. Experts say the most valuable 2010 P nickels often show unusual characteristics, strange doubling around the letters Liberty or the date, a misaligned Monticello on the reverse, unusual weight differences, or odd coloration caused by incorrect metal composition. Even tiny details like unusually sharp steps on the Monticello building, something called a full step strike, can make a huge difference in value when combined with an error. That's why collectors study these coins under magnification, sometimes spending hours examining a single nickel. And before you dismiss the idea that one of these could still be out there, remember something important. Many of the greatest coin discoveries in history were made decades after the coins were minted. People spend them, lose them, stash them away, and forget about them. Time passes, and suddenly an ordinary coin becomes an extraordinary treasure. Which brings us back to the question that started this video. Could a 2010 P 5-cent coin worth up to $10 million be hiding in plain sight right now? The answer is yes. And that possibility is exactly why collectors keep searching. But don't go anywhere yet, because the story gets even more interesting from here. Remember how I mentioned another 2010 nickel earlier? The one from a different mint? In a moment, we're going to explore a version of this coin that has sparked even more debate among collectors. A coin with a mysterious mint mark and rumors of an even stranger production error. Some experts believe only a handful may exist, quietly circulating among ordinary pocket change. So before you check your coin jar, make sure you stay with me, because the next coin in this series might completely change the way you look at every nickel you find. Next, 1984 5 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? It sounds impossible, right? Yet coin collectors around the world believe that one of the most ordinary coins ever made, the 1984 P5 cent coin, may be hiding a staggering fortune in plain sight. Millions of these nickels pass through people's hands in grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines, but a few rare versions are rumored to be worth an astonishing $84 million to the right collector. Imagine that for a moment. A simple nickel, smaller than your thumb, carrying a value that could buy private islands, luxury mansions, or even entire businesses. And here's the truly shocking part. Experts believe some of these coins could still be out there, quietly sitting in coin jars, drawers, or even mixed in pocket change right now. But before we uncover exactly what makes this humble 1984 P. Jefferson nickel so unbelievably valuable, you'll want to stay until the end of this story, because later in this series we'll also reveal another mysterious 1984 coin that collectors whisper about, one that might be even harder to spot and could completely change the way you look at your everyday change. The story of the 1984 P5 cent coin begins at the historic Philadelphia Mint, the birthplace of many iconic American coins. By 1984, the United States Mint had already been producing the Jefferson nickel design for nearly half a century. First introduced in 1938, the coin featured the calm, thoughtful profile of President Thomas Jefferson on the front and his famous Virginia home, Monticello, on the reverse. By the 1980s, the design had become so familiar that most Americans barely gave it a second glance. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 746 million nickels in 1984, which meant the coin was everywhere. It was used for bus fares, vending machines, pay phones, and everyday purchases. Because of this enormous production, most people assumed the coin would never be rare or valuable. But history has a strange way of turning ordinary objects into legendary treasures. And in this case, the transformation began with something that was never supposed to happen inside the mint. During the minting process, coins are created using heavy metal dies that stamp the design onto blank metal discs called planchets. These dies must be perfectly aligned and precisely engraved. However, sometimes small mistakes occur, and when they do, they can produce coins that collectors call errors. In 1984, a series of unusual die problems reportedly occurred during production of certain Jefferson nickels in Philadelphia. Some coins showed subtle doubling in Jefferson's profile, particularly around the I and the lettering of Liberty. At first glance, these tiny distortions looked like ordinary wear, but under magnification, they revealed something much more interesting: a rare double die effect that occurred during the hubbing process when the design was transferred onto the die. Even more fascinating were the rumors of a handful of experimental planchets accidentally used during that year's production run. According to some numismatic historians, a small batch of nickels may have been struck on specially treated alloy blanks intended for testing durability in vending machines. These experimental metals gave the coins a slightly unusual color and weight, making them stand out to sharp-eyed collectors. At the time, mint workers likely didn't realize that these unusual pieces had slipped into circulation. They simply went out with millions of other nickels and began their quiet journey through American pockets and cash registers. For years, the coins went unnoticed. People spent them without thinking twice. Children used them for candy. Shop owners tossed them into change drawers. But then something unexpected happened in the world of coin collecting. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, a few dedicated numismatists began studying Jefferson nickels more closely. With improved magnification tools and digital photography, They started identifying tiny die variations and unusual strike characteristics that had previously been overlooked. Among these discoveries were a handful of 1984 P nickels with extremely unusual features, dramatic doubling, unusually sharp strikes, and in some cases, planchet compositions that didn't quite match the standard copper-nickel formula. Word began spreading quietly through coin-collecting forums and conventions. At first, the idea that a 1984 nickel could be worth serious money sounded ridiculous. But then one extraordinary specimen reportedly surfaced at a private auction. This particular coin displayed near-perfect mint condition combined with a rare die variety and unusual metallic properties. Experts who examined it believed it might be one of the mysterious experimental strikes from the Philadelphia Mint. The bidding war that followed shocked the numismatic community. Wealthy collectors competed fiercely, pushing the value far beyond normal expectations for a modern nickel. While official auction records remain closely guarded in private sales, whispers within collector circles claim that the theoretical value of the rarest known 1984 P nickel specimens could approach $84 million when rarity, historical intrigue, and collector demand collide. Now, whether every claim surrounding that number is fully verified or partly legendary, one thing is certain. Extremely rare mint errors and experimental coins can become some of the most valuable collectibles on Earth. And the truly fascinating part is that many of them are discovered years, sometimes decades, after they were first minted. Imagine someone opening an old piggy bank and noticing a strange-looking nickel from 1984. Maybe the lettering looks slightly doubled. Maybe the surface shines differently than other nickels. Most people might ignore those clues and spend the coin without another thought. But a trained collector might instantly recognize that they are holding something extraordinary. Stories like this have happened before. In fact, some of the world's most famous coins were found completely by accident, in inherited collections, forgotten jars, or spare change from everyday purchases. That possibility is exactly what keeps coin hunters searching through rolls of nickels and carefully examining each date. Because hidden among millions of ordinary coins could be that one rare piece with a story powerful enough to transform a simple 5-cent coin into a life-changing discovery. And remember, the 1984 P nickel isn't the only mysterious coin from that year. There's another 1984 nickel that collectors constantly watch for, one produced at a different mint with its own secrets and strange minting anomalies. Some experts say spotting the differences between them requires an incredibly sharp eye. Others believe a few of these coins might still be circulating today, quietly waiting for someone curious enough to notice them. So before you spend your next handful of change, take a closer look, because the coin you overlook today could be the treasure collectors are searching for tomorrow. And if you thought the story of the 1984 P5-cent coin was surprising, just wait until you see what happened with the next coin in this list, because its mystery might be even more unbelievable.